Hi, and welcome back to a podcast above a convenience store, talking Twin Peaks. I'm Joe Fremming. With me, as always, is Paul Muad'Dib.
Hello, everyone.
And we sound a little more serious about this episode as opposed to last episodes. It is probably because this is a very heavy episode. This episode goes into some dark places that traumatized me as a kid. I'm not going to lie. The reveal of who killed Laura Palmer is one of those things that just burned in my memory for the rest of my life. I had nightmares at the time, and I still occasionally do have nightmares just because of how it's presented and how they did it. And it's one of the freakiest things I've ever seen on television and in movies. I'm not going to lie.
So we've talked a little bit about this episode, and I think what I want to do, because you and I both have very vivid images of when we were kids, of what we experienced watching this particular episode. So I want to get up to that part, and I think we should both tell our stories.
Right now?
No.
When we get to it?
When we get to it.
Because honestly, people, this is a haunting reveal of who Mr. Tojamura is. I am just floored to this day.
I had no idea.
I completely forgot that was in this episode, honestly, so I had to crack that one.
Absolutely. I mean, that's almost as riveting as when we find out who M.T. Wentz was.
Over John Justice Wheeler.
And along with John, with the introduction of John Justice Wheeler. And Ted Raimi.
Ted Raimi. I love Ted Raimi, so I give him a pass for the ridiculousness that he was involved with. Ted Raimi always gets a pass from me for the most part. So
Fair enough.
Right. So the episode we're reviewing is called Lonely Souls. It was the 7th episode in season 2. Mm-hmm. This is pretty much where it all came to a head with the background drama. We've talked about the butting heads between Lynch Frost versus the studio, and this is the reason why is they wanted the reveal of who killed Laura Palmer.
Yes. And this episode starts out with Cooper, Gordon, Truman, Andy, Hawk, and Mike, a.k.a. Philip, are all drinking coffee in a line in the lobby.
And, so it kind of starts off a little lighter, except Mike, he's reciting what we heard in the last episode about, like, where he knows where Bob is, and he it's just kind of like a retreading of what he said, or like many rooms, people come in, different people are there, in and out. I mean, he's just talking about the Great Northern. I don't know if he's just, like a broken record or something, or he just repeating the last thing he said at this point. But yeah, so I'm guessing it's just kind of like a soft reminder of what's lying ahead here.
That's how I took it. I'm like, okay, this has been, you got to remember it was a week between episodes, so yeah, I think that's was exactly that, was kind of a reminder, and it does kind of sort of, I'll give it a pass because it's Mike, it's a lodge entity, and he's not really talking right the whole time, so it kind of makes sense that he wouldn't be able to say that it was the lodge. You know what I mean? So it makes sense.
Yeah. All right.
So then Gerard, Truman tells Hawk to go search Harold's apartment.
Yep.
Because of what happened before about the diary, because of the pages. Yep. And I'm going to Bend, Oregon.
Secret stuff. Can't talk about it.
Real hush, Coop.
It makes me wonder, like, what's going on in Bend, Oregon, considering now we know, like, about Blue Rose and everything.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. I mean, here you got this massive Blue Rose case that's gone on for a long time, and yet Gordon's going to go to Bend, Oregon. So yeah, I want to know that story too. Like, what the fuck's going on in Oregon?
Yeah, and then he also reveals that pages were found in the boxcar where Laura was killed, or came from a diary.
Yes. So then it basically cuts right to, which is a crazy scene. They got Mike in a chair, and they're parading everyone through. And they got just the craziest, wackiest characters like cheerleaders and sailors and weird shit going on. And they're just passing everybody by Mike, and he's going, nope, nope, nope.
Mike is also looking like he's having a panic attack, and honestly, I would be too if I was dragged to a hotel and had people like coming up to me,
right,
talking to me like that. So I think there's maybe a couple things going on here with poor Mike.
Yeah, and the other thing I was thinking about too, because I'll be honest, like when we were going to do this one, I watched this episode at least 7 times. I can remember, because I really wanted to have it in my head and have it fresh for this. The thing that came to mind for me was that also how, taxing that had to be if he has to like peer in and like look for this other entity in there. I was thinking to myself, okay, I could see where, in terms of the lore, how that could be very taxing to Mike, where he's like trying to find Bob in these people. It can't just be like a simple I'm looking, because I think if that was the case, he would have found Bob years ago. But then, of course, we'll get into that later.
We'll talk about the road rage incident in Firewalk. Because now I know what you're getting at here. Yeah, it looks like he's flipping one off, but he has the
Yes, exactly. Yep.
Yeah. So. But yeah, I think it's taxing on Mike. And I think Mike's concerned because it's taxing without the chemicals. I think it's taxing on Philip. And as we discussed last time, we don't think Mike is, he's a helpful entity of the lodges. So I don't think he wants to put Philip in harm's way. So I think he gets nervous when Philip's in pain too. And as we'll find out, there is communication between these entities and their hosts, because Bob lets one out during the reveal.
Yes, and so does the Giant.
The Giant, too. And Senior Drool Cup.
Senior Drool Cup. Yes.
But yeah, so Mike's having a bad reaction, and they kind of, they're imposing this with Ben Horn chomping on a cigar, storming through his hotel, because he's wondering what the commotion is. But this is kind of like what we talked about briefly, in that they did film 2 reveals.
Yes.
And we've already laid out who killed Laura Palmer, but I'll just kind of just say it's just like, this is like a red herring with Ben. It's like a distraction. It's used purposely, and I think it worked, because I think when I first watched this, and I didn't get to watch it live because I think they'd moved it to a different night. I think they moved it from Sundays to like a school night and a little later. So I had to watch this on a VHS tape that my dad taped like the next day or that weekend. So yeah, it's you're automatically thinking like, oh crap, it's Ben. And they lay a lot of red herrings toward Ben in this, especially when he's talking to his daughter.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and they lay they do. There's a lot of things that are pointing towards Ben Horn this entire episode. And so as soon as Ben enters the lobby, pissed off, Gerard flips out. And that's kind of the end of the scene. He just, they're trying to get him under control. And then it cuts to Deputy Hawk, who's at Harold Smith's and finds him dead.
Yeah, he has hung himself.
He's hung himself, and his whole place is a fucking wreck. It's just destroyed. Books and everything are just torn up. The house looks like a fucking disaster.
Now, yeah. Do you think he did this? I mean, there's part of it, like I've thought for years that Harold did this, but it also feels like turning over that place, it felt like maybe somebody else did that too.
So
somebody else could have been somebody who knew
what it was.
Yeah.
Well, so I think, as you and I talked about in our last episode, I think there would have been more with Harold, and I think it was, and I think maybe Harold was harboring. I do think Harold was harboring a lodge entity, and I think that lodge entity did it. I don't think Harold did it himself, and I think the fact that the suicide note, which was a Jai Unam Solitaire,
I'm a Lonely Soul.
I'm a Lonely Soul, which is how the episode got its name, but that becomes important in the next couple of episodes, and that to me, that's the link that was like, okay, so I think it wasn't necessarily quote Harold, but I think it was whatever was in Harold.
Yeah, because he was living next door to lodge entities, and we haven't got to the we know it, but we haven't gotten to the reveal for what Donna sees. It was really Mrs. Tremont.
Exactly. We've seen the Tremonts since that one episode.
So I think there's something protecting Harold in his house, and we all know wood is an important thing, so it could be something
like that.
Something his house is built out of. We don't know. Obviously, this is Lynch Frost world. They don't give us all the answers, which makes it so much fun for us to be interpreting this.
Yeah, but I do think Harold. I think had things gone the way they would have gone, I think we would have learned that Harold was going to be a much bigger deal, as you and I talked about last podcast. And it doesn't feel like this was what the Harold character would have done. But I don't think it was anyone necessary. I don't think it was Bob breaking in and doing it. I do think it was something with the lodge entities doing it.
Well, because in Fire Walk with Me, we do see Bob. He turns over Laura's bedroom in a similar way. That's why I kind of thought that as a bit.
Yeah, but I know where you're going with that. The only thing I'll disagree with on that though was also in Fire Walk with Me. You learn that that's the reason why she gave Harold, because Bob wouldn't know who Harold was. Right.
Oh, okay. Yeah. All right.
So that's just my thought on it. But yes, I don't think it was Harold himself. I do think it's a lodge entity. I just think it's one that he had in him that flipped out. Because even in the short couple of episodes, Harold is a kind of also a dualistic character. I mean, he's this, nerdy, shy, whatever, nice guy, but then he's feeding booze or drinking and having Donna, an underage high school girl, tell him sex stories. So there was something going on there.
And speaking of dualism, we've kind of touched on it, but this, because we're going into this next scene, and this is kind of showing Lynch's approach to dualism, light and dark, contrasting against one another. And it's Maddie.
Mm-hmm.
At the Palmer house, and the record players playing "What a Wonderful World" by Louis Armstrong.
Yes.
And if we juxtapose this scene with the reveal, it's more of that dualism of here's the lighter side of this, and then we see the dark side of almost same spots, same area, same people.
Yes. So Maddie says that she's going to tell Uncle Leland and Aunt Sarah that she's going to go back to Missoula because she has her job and she has her life. And
Leland's taking it pretty well.
Leland's like, you know what? We totally understand. You have your life. And even Sarah's like, we understand. What?
Yeah, Sarah probably because I'm sure she needs. Leland's gone back to work. I'm sure Sarah wants somebody around.
Yeah, and let's be fair. Maddie is Laura. I mean, Maddie looks exactly like Laura, so I think that had a lot to do with it as well. So, so that is just it's a very touching scene. It's a very understanding scene, and it ends with all of them kind of hugging and
Yeah.
Um, and
it's the flip side to what's to come.
Yes.
Which is like, again, these themes that Lynch and Frost put into this it's evident. And like, I'm not as familiar with Frost's work outside of Twin Peaks, but this is a lot of, it's always the devil and David Lynch to an extent in everything he does, except for maybe Elephant Man. Doesn't really, a little bit of it does, but like Mulholland Drive, Lost Highway, Wild at Heart to an extent. It's dualism is his thing. He likes the light and the dark. He likes to show something bright and shiny. It's like the opening of Blue Velvet. It's like this scenic, 1950s Americana, and it goes all the way, and like underneath it, he just shows ants just burrowing away.
Yes, ants and centipedes. And I'll even go to, say, Dune to an extent, because I think that's what kind of drew Lynch to that, was the fact that you had the main character becoming a different character. And I think, it wasn't as much to the extent as I think Lynch would have liked, but I think he saw that and went, okay, I can do something with that, albeit as little as it was. Speaking of things to come, Bobby and Shelley are dealing with a very childlike Leo.
Yeah. He's got gump on his face. Shelley's only getting $42 a month now after all the insurance takes everything, and Bobby is like, now it's funny when Lynch comes back to this world, especially like in the first two seasons, in that he treats these characters like how they were supposed to be. You know what I mean? Like, Bobby's a selfish prick.
Yep.
That's how we were introduced to him. So he's doing this to Shelley, like, which is kind of like a 180 from what we were seeing up to this point. Like, Lynch is like, no, this is who he is. Like, he's a dick.
Yep.
And he's gonna be a dick to Shelley.
Yeah, absolutely. Because Shelley's going, what are we gonna do, Bobby? He's like, I'm supposed to be in home ec class or something, like some fucking bullshit.
It feels like a commentary on where the series has gone at this point, where he's like, yeah, well, aren't I supposed to be in school?
Yeah.
A commentary on the show's like ditching this premise of these are high school kids.
Yeah. It's so, and then we get the new shoes. Which
it's funny. It seems like Bobby forgets. I think it's in the pilot, Leo throws the football with the Coke in it, and he before he does it, like, Daddy needs a new pair of shoes. Like, this is what Leo says to all, I think, his drug runners, is like, I need my money. Where's my money? I need new shoes. But Bobby's just like, forgets that he had maybe it's because he was threatening him with a gun and everything. But again, as I like to point out in every episode, Bobby killed a cop.
Bobby killed a cop. But the thing is that I go, okay, here's if the new shoes was a clue, which I think maybe it had been. It was the new shoes he bought from Philip/Mike, and it was the ones they found with the cocaine underneath the floorboards. So that's kind of already been done and had, but as we'll find out, I'm just gonna get through this whole part. So we see the return of Snake.
Mike. We're not calling him Mike. God damn it, Paul. No, just don't entertain this. It was bad writing then. We don't have to acknowledge it. Look, everybody, we love Twin Peaks, but we can admit when they fuck things up, and calling him Snake was a fuck up.
So Mike aka Snake, and the reason I'm calling
No. You just call him Mike and finish your sentence.
They show up, and he's talking about, Shelley's gone. She's at the diner. She's telling Norma that she has to quit because she has to take care of Leo full time.
And I feel that's what done well. I feel bad for Shelley. You can tell she actually likes working there.
Yes. That was a great scene. And it was just showed the friendship between the two of them, and So while she's doing that, the adventures of Bobby and Snake are
Mike.
So Mike brings up the idea that people mule things in their shoes. So boom, they find a hidden micro cassette, which will set up Jesus Christ the story later. So,
which I think at least they're like leaving some clues, and I don't know if they knew where they were going to go with this, but at least they're like it intrigues me. At least when I see this, I'm just like, that's interesting. That like there could have been so many possibilities with that, because I'm going to talk about it briefly right now. Is Lynch leaves after this. Frost sticks around for a little bit, but their intention was, if we're going to reveal, then the next mystery was not who killed Laura Palmer, but why Laura Palmer was killed. Is what we're going to kind of focus on.
Yep.
So I think they're kind of laying the groundwork here, but then I'm sure just things just blow up after this episode.
Real quick, things blow up. There's the touching scene there, and then
now we go to Audrey and Ben.
No, not yet. Well, we'll get to Audrey and Ben. I want to get rid of some of this fucking CD stuff first, if you don't mind.
Is there more?
There's more. Oh, there's more, because Nadine and Ed show up at the diner.
Yeah. Who cares? Let's skip it. It's just Nadine, super strength. It's stupid. We know Lynch likes it because he brings this kind of comic booky stuff into the return. All I can say is like Peggy Lipton is stunning in this, and I just want to throw that out there. She was a very stunning woman looking.
Yes. Peggy Lipton is a very stunning looking woman. Very, very, very attractive at this time. So now we go to Ben. All right, fine. So we got that. Yeah. Now we go to Ben and Audrey.
Because nothing really, it's more Nadine's dementia or whatever until she snaps back. It doesn't add anything to the story. It's just, I think Lynch just threw it in there for whatever reason. But we get and I like this because we've talked about it before. Lynch and Frost gave us some very strong female lead characters, and Audrey being number one on that list. This is the scene where, for me, I think it just shows just how powerful of a character she is and how much sway she has over her father, because she confronts him basically just like, hey, I know you own One-Eyed Jacks. I was there. And Ben's kind of like playing it off like, oh, God, here we go again. Until she mentions, I was the one you tried to rape that day.
Yeah. Yep. She goes, remember Prudence? I wore a white mask. And Ben goes, oh, fuck. And realizes he is busted.
Yeah, he's caught red-handed. You can tell that Audrey in his eyes is the future of the Horn Empire. He has, even when he's caught, he has a lot of respect for her. And he answers her questions honestly. Like, look, yep. He's owned One-Eyed Jacks for 5 years.
Yep.
He not only slept with Laura Palmer, he loved her, which is a weird turn for that, and they never really touch upon it, as far as from what I can recall. But
no, they don't.
But he was, he's straight up with his daughter who caught him red-handed. Like, yeah, I'm a shitty person. Like, this is who I am, and it's an intense scene, and I just love it. I just love how he's like a caught little school kid with his mom. That's how much weight Audrey holds over Ben.
Yes, and the other thing you're talking about strong female characters. Something I in the repeated viewings I actually really enjoyed about this scene is that they also, and it's a very subtle thing, but they put very little makeup on Sherilyn Flynn.
Yeah,
in this scene.
This and like when she was in Cooper's bedroom when she had very little makeup on too, stunning. Just stunning too.
Yes,
with, like, less makeup. I'm just like, wow, she is a stunning looking woman.
Absolutely.
Now I'm feeling like a sexist, but I just they're beautiful women. I don't know.
Well, dude, let's be fair though, and I'm gonna flip this on you though. This is also, it's not just beautiful women. There are some really good looking. I mean, Twin Peaks is a town full of good looking people.
Well, you got Agent Cooper. He's a catch.
Mm-hmm. Bobby Briggs, he's a very good looking guy.
Hawk.
Hawk.
God. Like
Yeah.
you and cast that movie, you guys did like that list of like man crushes.
Mm-hmm.
Hawk probably not in my top 3, but he's at least in my top 10.
Oh yeah. Michael Horse, fucking A. Absolutely. Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, and to be fair, even James is not a bad looking guy.
You shut your whore mouth. We're not talking James.
So point is that Twin Peaks has some. Snake is good looking. So
I'm sorry, I went deaf there for a minute.
So yeah, the point is that there's some very attractive looking people in this small ass town of less than 5,000 people. But the other thing I loved about that was also it shows that she is, like, I felt part of that whole thing with her not having the makeup on, her being very pale, was part of this. She's recovering from fucking heroin addiction and is calling her old man out on owning a brothel. Jesus Christ. I mean, it's not been fucking a day that she's been off the fucking sauce, and she's already being feisty as fucking trying to get answers.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, to be that young and be able to kick heroin within a few hours.
Dude, God, those were the days. So everyone shows up at Harold's, and they find the Laura's Palmer diary that's all torn up. So Cooper's back at the police station, and he's putting things together. And he talks about, he sees the repeated references to Bob in this, and how which is, for the fact that this was network television, the fact that they were able to get away with even the fact of being able to put up that she was sexually abused since childhood was crazy. And refers to Bob as a friend of her father, and then finds an entry that says, "Someday I'm going to tell the world about Ben Horn. I'm going to tell the world exactly who Ben Horn is." And at that exact moment, Audrey enters.
Yep. And she tells Coop what she's learned from her father. Like, she does what Donna and James and all these people should do when they get information. Like, go to law enforcement.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Audrey, for being a responsible citizen, unlike your dipshit high school cohorts.
Donna,
Nancy Drew mysteries.
Yep, Donna Drew's mysteries. And again, it just goes to show how freaking smart of a character Audrey is. And so, yeah, she tells Cooper everything that her dad told her, that he slept with Laura, that he owned One-Eyed Jacks. And now, to Ben's credit, we skipped over a little bit. When she's asking the questions of Ben, he's like, "Did you know she was working there?" He's like, "No, she wanted a job at the department store, and she got the perfume counter, and Battis sent her without my fucking approval."
Yeah.
And then she's like, "But did you sleep with her? Did you?"
And he's like, "Yeah,
I did." And she's like, "Did you kill him? And did you kill her?" And he says, "I loved her."
And we should also remind Laura was such a hot mess at One-Eyed Jacks that she worked one night and was booted by Blackie
for being fucked up. Yeah. And when you look at all the shit that Audrey Horne pulled, it had to be a lot of shit that fucking. It's
like getting kicked out of the Rolling Stones for being a drug addict.
Right. It's kind of, I equate it to the Charlie Sheen story where Charlie Sheen talks about the night he was out partying with Slash, and Slash sat him down and took a bump from his coke ring and told him that he needed to go to rehab. So there's that. So then after she, he's like, don't tell anyone what you said. Go home, be safe. He grabs Truman. He said the Giant's message without chemicals. He points, and he was pointing when Ben Horn entered the room, and we need a warrant for the arrest of Benjamin Horn.
Yeah. So this is like, I think at this point, people are like, oh, we got the who killed Laura Palmer mystery.
Yep.
All right. Good work, everybody.
No.
Nope.
Nope. You know why? Because it's Tojamura time. That's why, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah. So Tojamura is at Ben's office. They're finalizing the worst business deal in television history that we've touched upon a lot. In that Ben's selling development on property. Does he own it now? I think Josie signed it over. So maybe, yeah, he does own it now.
I think he finally owns it. Yep.
Finally owns it. So, hey, Ben, at least you did this part right. But what you don't want to have happen when you're talking with your investors is getting arrested for murder.
No. Okay. So we're going to learn in a little bit here what the reveal is with the first reveal of the episode, which is who is Tojamura. So
still haunted to this day.
So Tojamura has this check for $5 million, right? And he's, hey, we went to Japan. We checked it with all your investors. Everything's on the up and up. This is good. We're going to run through with this. And then they all show up and he's like, what are you doing here? I got a business. And he's like, you're under arrest for the, in connection to the murder of Laura Palmer. And Ben can't believe it. And Ben's like, I'm going to go get a sandwich.
Yeah, well, he's like, I know powerful people. He's like a rat in a cage at this point. Like, he's never experienced being on this side of the law. And you can tell it's what the kids call these days white privilege.
Mm-hmm.
It's affluent. Very true. Like, this is like, I wrote in my notes, like, I imagine if Trump was ever arrested for something, this would be exactly how he would act. Like, no, I'm going to take a walk. I'm going to go get a sandwich. You can't buy your way out of this, man. Like, you're caught. You have some bad evidence against you. Like, you don't get to just walk away from an FBI agent like that.
Yeah. And the thing I liked about this one, which also goes to the story and knowing that there was going to be the other reveal that was going to be Ben, that could have been Ben at some point, although we know it wasn't. When they arrest him, the way he yells no is a very different way that had he been talking the entire episode,
or even to the series at this point. Mm-hmm. We have not seen Ben like this.
Yeah, because he's just no, and like his voice changed almost, and you're just like, whoa, what is going? Like, it leads more credence to the red herring that, oh, okay, something's going on here with him. Yeah, so they take him off, and Tojamura is standing there like, what the fuck do I do? Meanwhile,
let's get to the Tojamura thing before we get, because what comes up next is basically the reveal, and I want to go through some other things with the scenes that happened within that, because there is I want to talk about a little bit, especially with like some elements of the return. So like Mr. Tojamura, I'm confused how all this checked out for this man, considering it's Catherine. Catherine survived the fire.
Right.
And we find out because Mr. Tojamura breaks into Pete's house as he's having his midnight glass of milk or something. And just plants a big old kiss on him.
Oh, my God.
Look here, mister.
Look here, Buster.
Oh, we love Pete Martell.
Oh, my God. I love Pete Martell. Yes. So, yeah, they had been, I forget what the actor's name was, that they had been attributing for the last couple episodes. Fumio Yamaguchi was Mr. Tojamura. Okay? No one on set knew that was Piper Laurie. And that was meant to be a big fucking secret.
It's a big who gives a shit, I guess. Like, it was such a weird thing to put Piper Laurie in Asian face.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, I guess even at the time, that still feels wrong. Like, Man, didn't we learn from Soul Man?
Well, Soul Man, well, man, that's a classic. That's a classic. That's that's C. Thomas Howell
It
at his
didn't
best.
completely tank C. Thomas Howell's career for the next 2 decades or anything.
No, totally didn't ruin his career. But yes, no, you're absolutely right. Like, yeah. So they totally Charlie Chan the shit out of Piper Laurie, and made her fucking yellow face. And we're having her as to everyone on set for for days, weeks, whatever this fucking took to do with this character, with this Tojamura character. We're having everyone go Fumio Yamaguchi. So, that fucking happened. So yeah. So in this means, okay, so let's dig into this a little bit, because how in the short period of time, because we're gonna find out in the next episode, we aren't jump ahead because it's C plot, that she basically found herself in Pearl Lakes after the fire and was taking care of herself, but yet somehow during this time frame she was able to create a fake Asian character, work with fake Asian Japanese investors, and do all this shit. What the fuck, Joe?
Yeah. Unless this was like her long game plan that we didn't know about, it makes zero sense. It does not add up.
Right.
I don't care how much wackiness the Black Lodge can play around with time and whatever. This has nothing to do with it, so it's just bad writing.
Yeah, and this has got to be. I mean, at this point, when you really dig into this, you go, this is the doldrums that is the C&D plots of the second season. It just, things are just put in there because you're supposed to accept it, and it just breaks your brain. You're like, wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. But give credit where credit's due. Piper Laurie's a hell of an actress.
Yeah. Oh, I love Piper Laurie. Like, she's just great. She's, as much as, like, I don't care for, like, the soap opera-y stuff of this show, I still like Catherine because she's a snarky son of a bitch, and I gotta love her for that.
Absolutely. Yeah. And she was and is a tremendous actress. So I will definitely, give her always her due as it's owed. So
now we lead into what ruined Joe and Paul's childhood.
Yes. So we cut to a scene where Sarah Palmer is
crawling down the stairs,
calling out for Leland, and she's obviously fucked up, and it just it cuts to this eerie scene of this phonograph of a record that's playing, that's skipping at the end. It cuts right to that, to everyone back at the sheriff with the log lady.
Yeah, Ben goes into the holding cell, and the log lady's there.
Mm-hmm.
And the log has something to tell Cooper and Harry, and that is there are owls at the roadhouse.
Yep. She doesn't know when, and she doesn't know how, but there are owls in the roadhouse. And
she's obviously spooked, so she knows something is not right.
Yep. And Cooper, and this, I love this because it reminds me of the Bob Dylan song Ballad of a Thin Man, because Cooper goes, something is happening, isn't it, Margaret? Which, if you're familiar with that Ballad of a Thin Man, one of the main choruses, something is happening, but you don't know what it is, do you, Mr. Jones? So they need to go to the roadhouse. Before they get to the roadhouse, it does this really creepy cut to the outside, and it, the moon, and it really sets the tone. And we're back to Sarah, who's calling out for Leland, and then she sees a pale horse in the living room and passes out. Now, I want to dive into this a little bit, Joe. What do you?
There's two. I think there's two obvious reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Horse. One is horse historically kind of represents, it's slang for drugs. Sarah's obviously drugged.
Yep.
It's also biblical. I'm not. You're more. You know more about the biblical aspects, but I believe it in Revelations. It makes reference to a pale horse.
Death is written on a pale. Death.
Death is written on a pale horse, and
yes.
And the horse, it's not a good sign. There's a lot of there's like you have the dualism there.
You do. You have the dualism there, but now I'm going to bring up the return, and we don't have to go into much of it. But knowing what we know in the return, do you think
the poem?
Not even the poem, but knowing what we know about Sarah, do you think that had something to do with that particular lodge entity?
I don't think. Well, one, what Sarah has is not a lodge entity.
True.
It's we'll get into it. We'll kind of since you're listening, like we might as well. I don't think because we know Judy is in Sarah Palmer.
Mm-hmm. And if you don't know who Judy is, don't worry about it, guys.
I've read some theories that's about this in that Judy comes and goes at times with Sarah, and that because that's like how they. I'll share a video. I watched a really interesting theory on this. I'll share it with you later. But yeah, I have. I don't think Judy's here, and I don't think Judy is always with Sarah. I think Judy implanted the seed to be able to inhabit Sarah, but it just seems weird to have Judy and this other entity in the same house, considering the other one's been searching for her.
Yes, absolutely. It seems very interesting. And when you think about what that dynamic is. So, okay, and that is fair enough. And, at the time, it's very well known because probably Judy wasn't even thought about really, or was just
Judy was not a thing at this point.
Yep.
That doesn't come till Fire Walk with Me.
Yep.
But why don't you tell us what your theories on the horse?
So obviously I thought the same thing. It had to do with the death, with the drugs, obviously.
Because we also see the horse in the lodge too in the return.
Yes,
throws me off a bit.
Yeah, it does throw me off a little bit, but I also wonder if, much like, so the theory is that the cutting of the scenes when you see the stoplights, red is when the Black Lodge is open, green is when the White Lodge is open. It's one of the theories. I wonder if this isn't something, because again, you look at the return with the horse, you kind of look at, I think the horse, was it the return? I thought it was also in Fire Walk with Me. I could be wrong on that.
I think it might have been in Fire Walk with Me and
the return.
I think it is in Fire Walk with Me. I think Sarah is drugged the night.
Yes.
Yeah, because Leland.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
He forces that milk that he laces with whatever.
Yes. So I wonder if the horse having shown up at certain times is like a sign that, much like it being the horse, the death horse, but is being something along the of like, hey, the Black Lodge is doing something terrible.
Yeah, because I think that is I think it's a signifier that something is. It is happening again.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that is exactly what it is. It's the repeater. And so then it cuts to Leland fixing his tie.
Nope. We go back to the roadhouse first.
That's right.
So we go to the roadhouse.
Nope. Yeah, they do go to Leland fixing his tie, but that's it. Then it cuts to the roadhouse, but it does pan to Leland.
And so we go to the roadhouse, and this is where I think. Because it's funny, because my theory with the return, and I'm just going to throw this out here, is that people were confused by the people kind of at the end of each episode, I'd go to the roadhouse and people are just kind of talking about their lives and what's been going on in Twin Peaks, but we have no backstory. But we see Donna and James doing this exact same thing. And I think what the return was doing is life is still continuing on in Twin Peaks. We just don't have to, you don't need to know all the stories going on.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I absolutely
because it's shot the same. It's shot like the same angles in the booth with Donna and James. You can mirror those with like the random people we just never know in the return.
Yep, 100%. I completely agree with you. So the Roadhouse. So yeah, Cooper, Truman, and Log later there, which is filled with the sailors from the from the Great Northern. Donna and James are there.
Julie Cruz is singing.
And Julie Cruz is amazing. Although the horn section throws me off a little bit here and there. Yeah. So James and Donna are talking about Harold dying, Maddie, and, I look at Laura Flynn Boyle in this particular scene, and she just her entire look, her entire character, her entire thing really just sums up like the Gen X female of the 90s. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. I do. But yeah, so they're talking. Maddie's going back to Missoula. John's like, oh, she didn't tell me. And we're getting this conversation again, like in the return, we keep hearing about who is the character they keep talking about, like these random, like there's like a thread in the return, but like, yeah, it's just kind of like you're talking about what happened in your day or whatever. And Cooper's there, and then Julie Cruz starts singing Falling. Mm-hmm. And that's she vanishes like in the song. The lights go out, spotlight on Cooper,
and the music
starts on the giant.
Mm-hmm. And then the music starts. That dark music starts. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the giant he's not warning Cooper. He's not giving it. He's breaking the news. Basically, like Cooper dropped the ball.
Yeah,
it's happening again.
It's happening again. It's happening again.
Yeah, and after the reveal, it's interesting that everybody seems to notice something's wrong. And Cooper has on his face like, I fucked up. Yep. And he doesn't know why. Nobody knows why yet.
Nobody knows why. And
we'll sense of loss. People are crying. And it's not the song. I think it's just the atmosphere in Twin Peaks is taking a dark turn. And I think it might remind everybody of the night Laura died.
And I think there's something to the fact that all these things happen in the Roadhouse. The Roadhouse is something. There's something with the Roadhouse because, and I think it goes to show how there's certain sensitive people because not everyone feels it.
No, but Bobby does.
Bobby does. And Donna does, and Cooper does.
Yeah. And the log lady seemed to know that this was what was going to happen. I think intuitively. I don't think she knew the logistics, but I think she knew this is, something went wrong. Mm-hmm. Cooper didn't follow all the rules or something. And I think Cooper realizes like he must have missed something because it's happening again and he can't do anything to stop it. The wheels are in motion. And the wheels in motion flips back to Leland doing his tie. And I feel like crying in terror because it's fucking frightening.
Uh-huh. So Leland's smiling in the mirror. He's fixing his tie. And then it cuts to him. And then it cuts back to the mirror. And it's Bob. And then you see it cuts back to Leland. And then he's adjusting his tie. But then there's like a superimposed Bob over his head laughing and cackling. And it's crazy. And then Leland goes and grabs some latex gloves. Maddie starts yelling.
She's smelling something burning.
And she comes down and she sees Sarah unconscious on the floor. And I believe she sees Bob the entire time.
I do too.
I don't think she saw Leland. I think she saw Bob. She screams.
I think Fire Walk With Me confirms that. Every time Laura's molested by Bob, she sees Bob.
Yeah.
There's one when she finds out it's like the reverse. She finds out who Bob is, as opposed to
Yes. Yes, because she's calling out one night, "Who are you? Who are you? Who are you?" And then she sees who he is. And so Leland's grinning, and it's going back and forth, and she's screaming. Okay, Joe, this is the time to talk about our kids.
He straight up just punches her too. That's just like another, yeah.
Let's talk about what happened to us as kids here. All right, what's your experience?
All right, so like I said earlier, I believe my dad taped it, and then I watched it because I don't remember watching it live. I remember I had to watch a VHS copy. Again, I think I might have switched nights, so I wasn't able to watch or whatever. So I'm by myself in a dark my parents' bedroom with a VCR or something, or in the living room by myself. It was like after school, and my parents were both working. My memory is of that. The surrounding is like not really relevant. I just remember I was in the dark watching this, and oh my god, people have to remember we were 9 years old.
Yeah,
when this happened. This is not. And it's network TV. And if you're listening to this, you've obviously watched it. Imagine seeing that through the eyes of a 9-year-old. So it fucked me up. And I remember the weird part is I remember after I watched this, after Bob Leland kills Maddie, I was like gobsmacked, and I went and played with my friends like right afterwards. And I was describing what I saw to them. And like my buddy to this day is like, yeah, you describing that like gave me nightmares. And I didn't even watch the show because I went into such vivid detail of what was going on. Because I was just like, what the fuck?
So I was watching with my mom. My dad was upstairs watching something else. And we had the TV downstairs, and it's dark. Me and my mom are on the couch watching this. And all I see is the part where, up to the point where Leland's putting on the gloves. At that point, my mom goes, "Oh shit, this could get bad." She throws the blanket over my head and will not let me see what's going on. So all I am hearing is that horrible, slowed down, warped screaming that is going on. And it is just, I mean, my imagination is running wild on what is happening here. And that is how I experienced watching that for the first time. I couldn't see it. I could only hear it. And let me tell you something. Hearing it and not being able to actually see what happened was way more traumatizing in my head than I think had I been able to see what actually happened. And it took me years to ever go back and watch that episode because I had nightmares from those sounds.
Yeah, like when that's fucked up, man. like when you told me that story the first time. Yeah, that scene's just, Lynch is a master of horror, and like people often need to remember he's also very particular about sound.
Yes.
So if you just listen to that, it's just as terrifying as what you're seeing.
Oh, it really is. I mean, I invite anyone to watch that scene and just close your eyes or put a pillow over your head or whatever and just listen to it. It is a terrifying scene. Just the whole warbling and how it's going back and forth. So he straight up punches her. Yeah. He strangles her and beats her.
He beats her. Yeah, it's violent. Like, I can't believe this was on network television. I'm still shocked.
Well,
it's even, I read an interview with like Lynch was like, yeah, I was surprised, but he's like, I guess if you do it surreal enough that it gets by the censors.
Yes. And I actually have that quote pulled up for later. Yes, absolutely. So then we get this really interesting dynamic going on where Leland is dancing with, and I have a couple of theories on this, by the way.
She's beaten pretty bad, but I mean, I think she's barely conscious at this point.
Yes, yes. And he's dancing with her, but it's cutting in between scenes of him dancing and crying for Laura, intermixed with scenes of Bob
lusting for her.
Like, I mean, I took that as very implied rape.
Yeah, like, because he's like all over her. Like, he's on her. Like, Leland's crying. Bob is, he's in rape mode.
Yeah, he is in full on, like, fucking Weinstein rape mode here. And then this goes on for like 4 minutes. This whole scene goes on for 4 minutes. It's timed out at 4 minutes. And
then Bob gets angry.
Yes.
And he drops a thing that kind of goes with what we're talking about, the lodge entities. He says, Leland told me you're going back to Missoula.
Now, I will admit, having watched it so many times this time, I did laugh at the way Leland says you're going back to Missoula, Montana.
I'm glad we can laugh at this.
I'm glad at this trauma now, but just the way he says it, there is a camp to it, and rams her face into the glass picture frame. And if you notice, the words Missoula, Montana are in the lower corner of the picture.
I did not notice that. That's a good touch.
Yeah, it was a great touch. And then he puts the cutout under her fingernail.
Yep.
And the giant goes away. The old waiter walks up to Cooper and says, I'm so sorry. Then, as we said before, Donna starts to cry. Bobby starts to cry. Cooper's sad. And the whole thing.
Cooper, he doesn't know what or why.
Mm-hmm.
But he knows he's fucked up somewhere along the line here. Like, it's just in the air now. It's... Yeah.
Yeah. So...
Also, I just want to say, there's a lot of high school kids at this bar.
Yeah. A lot of high school kids hanging out at the bar drinking and smoking. Mm-hmm.
Don't remember that in high school, but, it's a different time.
Well, I will say I do.
Maybe Tom's bar?
No, mine was Bravo Burritos when it was still downtown.
That was everybody's. They served everybody.
So I want to talk about, getting into the meaning of that. What do you think was going on there with the whole Bob and Leland and the dancing and the cutting back and forth? I want your thoughts.
Well, I think it was, again, the dualism. We see that Bob even alludes, like, Leland told me. So Leland knows Bob is in him. That gives it away. I don't think there's any ambiguity. I just don't think he knows what Bob is up to.
Mm-hmm.
I think Leland's purposely blocked out of the Laura Palmer raping, the Laura Palmer murder, the Maddie Ferguson. I don't think he remembers this.
The Teresa Banks.
Yeah, Teresa Banks. I don't think, because it comes at him 2 episodes from now when it all comes flooding back to him, and it crushes. It literally kills him. That's just a lot of guilt. And I think what Lynch was doing was he was showing the grief of Leland knowing something's wrong and trying to hold on. And then we see Bob murdering and raping and taking. And it's just like, that is that dualism there. That's just one's grieving and loss and one's taking.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm part of that. I do. I love the idea of what you said there. With part of it was Leland grieving and trying to hold on, and there's this thing inside of him that won't let him and is destroying. And I think that is so key. And I think that is a really, 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 like, the centerpiece of it, of what deep down underneath all the layers are. It's kind of how we are our own worst enemy in a way, because of the two different lives that we have, or the two different aspects that we have within ourselves, I think is what Lynch is trying to say. But I also think on another level of what was going on there is, I question, and I want to bring this up to you and get your opinion on it, because I wonder, because if it was on network television, and the way that we see in Fire Walk with Me, how Leland doesn't switch as much. He's more always, when Bob's in, Bob is there. So I think this was something also to get by the censors, and I think there were some really implied horrible things that were happening that they couldn't do on television, and I think this was Lynch's way of trying to, do it. But I believe that also, in a way, the switching back and forth was representing basically the raping and destruction of innocence of Maddie's own being and soul. And that's what Bob was doing to her. That she was already basically dead before he threw her fucking into the picture frame.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think, Bob is raping and killing her. That's what we're implied, at least. I mean, and that's where it goes back to Leland's trying to hold on a little bit, and that's another thing with Leland is his ignorance of this. It's a mask of ignorance, which is quite literally in the child character in Fire Walk with Me. That's supposed to be Leland.
Yeah,
he's literally wearing a mask over his face,
so
he can't see the horrors.
Yeah, exactly. Yes, and they show that in there. And you brought up too. I don't know though. The one thing I will disagree with is I don't know if the thing he said, "Hey, Leland told me." I don't know if Leland was talking, because when we get to that episode, we could talk about this now because now the big reveal's over with and everything. Then a couple episodes, we're going to get to the scene where they're interviewing Bob, and they're like, "Does Leland know?" And he's like, "Leland's a babe in the woods." Yeah. There's a hole in his head where his conscience once was, but when I leave this body, I'm going to pull that like a ripcord, and he's going to remember everything. I think that whatever Leland knew, Bob knew.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just because Bob is inhabiting, I think, he's a parasite. He's seeing that. Leland's just an unwilling host. He doesn't know. Well, he might have an idea that something's not right. We don't really know for sure at this point, at least. It's we do know Bob inhabited Leland. We don't know the extent, but I think Leland was sexually assaulted by his father or mother.
I think so.
That's how Bob continues down the line.
It's through trauma. It's through childhood trauma.
It's through trauma, because the big thing in Fire Walk with Me is Laura rejects letting Bob consume her.
Yep.
It's like that's the big thing from Fire Walk with Me is Laura's inner battle, and ultimately she chooses, she'd rather die than be Bob's.
Yes, and it kind of is the whole. I think that was very much Lynch's way of showing how to end a cycle.
Yes, cycle abuse. So Leland more likely was sexually assaulted himself. I mean, this depending on how old Leland's character is, and when we'll get into part 8 of The Return. At least that's when White Sands nuclear blast is what birthed Bob into the world, the evil.
Yes. Yep.
So it probably was. Started with Leland's parents and then moved down the line.
Well, and I wonder if it may not have been Leland's parents. Oh, it could have been, because, I mean, I got that implied idea as well, especially when he said, "Hey, the neighbor guy, do you want to play with fire, little boy?" And flick matches at me. I just assumed that he was getting molested by Bob then.
Yeah, that's what I was too. But Laura doesn't know. She can't see Leland. She sees Bob.
Exactly.
So I think it was probably Leland's dad or mom doing this to him. They don't go into it, but it's one of those. Yeah. So
Yeah, this is a
Leland just
heavy
saw
episode.
Bob. He didn't see who the actual vehicle was of that.
Who the vehicle was, right? He only saw Bob. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. Yep.
And I think he blacked out the actual sexual abuse too.
I would agree with that. Well, just like I think he blacked out anything that he did. Again, I don't think he ever knew he had slept with Teresa Banks.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think that because he let Bob consume him, and I think Bob, like he says in 2 episodes from now, he shields this from Leland, not to protect him, but to use it as a final fuck you when he finally leaves there. His host.
Yes,
Bob is evil. He's not Mike. He wants to rain as much destruction as possible. So he's doing this not to protect Leland, but in Leland's last moments to make him realize the horror he's unleashed upon the world.
Exactly. And that gets more into, you'll see kind of a similar aspect of it with the return as well. He wants to hurt everything, and he doesn't give a fuck about his host. Again, when he goes, he says something along the lines of, "Oh, Leland, you were a great vehicle, but you're done. I'm done with you. Fuck you." That type of thing.
Yeah, because Leland's going to jail. Bob doesn't want to be stuck, and as we all see in the return, once he has the means, he nothing holds Bob and his hosts.
Nothing.
Even when his host is a doppelganger.
Oh God, that's a whole, that's going to be an interesting to get into. So this was a really heavy themed episode. And I think it really, like, when people, I think, try to talk about what is Twin Peaks and, as the mythology has grown, I kind of look at it from this whole 14 episode run as like the original intention of the show was to kind of show this duality, and basically I think it was Lynch's take on abuse. As things go on and as the mythos has grown, I think the the narrative has shifted, but I do believe this was kind of the original idea of what Lynch was trying to say here.
Especially if you look at Lynch's work from this time, abuse, violent abuses, violent relationships.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at Blue Velvet, it's a lot of the same kind of, like Frank Booth is pretty much he's almost like a precursor to Bob.
Absolutely, he is.
Frank does have, I think, Frank is pure id in a sense.
Yes.
You see him at one point weeping like a child or whatever, but I mean, I think that's to make him not be completely, even though it's in a completely fucked up scene in that movie. But Bob, this is, the devil in David Lynch. It's he really interested in showing the good and bad and then flipping it on its head a bit.
Yeah.
Does the same.
Go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, you look at the at kind of what the main character, who was Kyle MacLachlan as well in Blue Velvet, you look at what he went through, right? Like he's this caring person, and this woman wants him to be violent with her, and he's giving into these urges, and he's becoming this other thing. You know what I mean? Yeah,
she's kind of making him Frank too, in a sense, and that's not really him. And that's also like Isabella Rossellini's character. She's going through, and trauma is another big thing in Lynch's work.
Absolutely,
dealing with trauma, and I think he's talked about like some weird things he's seen, and like I'm sure like everybody, we all go through different traumas in life, and I think that sort of thing just really interests him, and it interested Frost. I think that's why they made, the show started as a town's trauma over the death of Laura Palmer. I mean, it's a collective trauma. Trauma kickstarts the story. Trauma ends the story as we know it, in a sense.
This is a really heavy episode. So, real quick, I'm going to get into production notes, and then speaking of town trauma, I want to go over we've been talking about throughout. We've been kind of leaving it out these last couple episodes, but as we started the series with, and said that we would get back to, was the trauma we went through, which was the story of Jacob Wetterling. And we promised that we would finalize that when we got to this point. Real quick, before we get to that, I just want to say, this was written by this episode. The writing credit goes to Frost, but I believe Lynch had a hand on it as well.
I think they work best like this too.
Yes.
They're kind of like them working together. But we kind of see it like when they're not really together in certain episodes. It's Lynch directs, but like Frost doesn't have a writing credit. It doesn't feel as cohesive. Like this feels as cohesive as the pilot to me.
Yes.
That they gelled really well together. Lynch works really well with Frost's material. I think they work together with it. Like maybe Lynch didn't get, the credit for whatever reason. But yeah, I think when it's just those two, and I think that's why I like The Return a lot. When it's just those two left to their own devices, you get something a little more special.
Absolutely. And that's exactly it. Lynch directed this one. Frost wrote it. It's terrific.
They're the Lennon McCartney of my childhood trauma.
Pretty much. Lynch later said that he was able, as you talked about this, to show more of the episode than he expected. He credited this to the unusual imaging, stating that if it's not quite standard, it sneaks through. But it could have been not quite standard things that make it even more terrifying and disturbing. So because it wasn't the standards that they were used to, the standards and practices were like, we don't know, sure, go for it. The cast of Twin Peaks did not know who would be revealed as the killer. Ray Wise had hoped that Leland was not going to be the murderer, and the whole idea disturbed him. And Wise remembered being called into a meeting with Lynch, Frost, Sherilyn, and Richard Beimer, who was Ben Horn, and we're told that it was. And Lynch said, "Ray, it was you. It was always you."
Yeah. Way to drop a bomb, but yeah. So also before I want to talk, because I know before there was only 3 people who knew the reveal going into season 2. It is Mark Frost, David Lynch, and Jennifer Lynch, and they told her that so when she wrote the secret diary of Laura Palmer, that she would have that in her head and maybe throw some red herrings toward that, which I believe she did.
Which she absolutely did. Absolutely did. And Lynch mentioned that he tried to avoid the morality of it and really just tried to do what he wanted to do. And he really tried to base it on the Fugitive, the 1960s Fugitive. So I think that's pretty much the notes I have, although I will say, going into the ratings again, the initial broadcast was viewed by 17.2 million households, making it the 51st most watched broadcast episode for the week. It represented 20% again of the available audience and 10.4% of all households. This was a significant rise over the other episodes and following the significant drops afterwards. It's considered a lot of people's favorite episode of the whole show. It makes everyone's top lists of the Nightmare Fuel's creepiest shit. IGN called it the number 16 top creepiest moments of the TV. People called it nightmare-inducing. It's violent, disturbing. The one nitpick that I have about that whole reveal scene is I will say that having watched it as many times as I did getting into this, there was one subtle thing that I think could have made it a little bit better that on like my 5th, 6th, 7th walkthrough or rewatch kind of threw me off a little bit, which is crazy given how fucking traumatic this episode is that I put myself through that for this fucking podcast, Joe. Is that I did notice that when they cut to finally the very first time they reveal that Bob is Leland and Leland is Bob, and there became like a musical note that I expected the music to hit, like a crescendo or like a off beat or something like that. But that music, if you watch, stays the same. And I felt like that took away a little bit of it. That's my one nitpick of that whole scene, of that whole final epilogue or the finale of that episode, is there's just one musical note that was missed, and it's not that noticeable. I'm just nitpicking, bringing that up.
Yeah, that didn't bother me.
Right.
It's like I think it'd be creepier if they just kept the record spinning noise. I think that would have just made it much more terrifying.
Yeah, completely agree.
Like, maybe it's a good thing they didn't do that. And then that record noise thing, that also, I just want to add, becomes a thing in the return. Very first episode, one of the very first things you see is a clue, and it's that record noise that we kind of see from Leland's turntable.
Yes.
And let me see. Was there one more other thing I wanted to add? Yeah, we also, because we brought it up, they did film 2 reveals. One with Ben Horn, one with Ray Wise. They knew they were going to use the Ray Wise one, but this was also to keep it. So there was, even if it leaked, nobody would have been known for sure since there was 2 reveals filmed.
Correct. Yes, they were very, very secretive about it.
The Richard Bremer one has never been released.
Yeah, I've never seen it. Never seen it and all this stuff, and I really wish we could, because I think that'd be awesome to see.
Oh, wait for the next 4 box sets from now, we'll probably get it.
Maybe. I just bought the Z to A, so, you know.
How is that?
I haven't opened it.
Oh, all right. Well, you'll have to open it for when we do the missing pieces.
Yes, I will have to open it for when we get the missing pieces, although I'm debating just buying the missing pieces ones because I want to keep that one, I think. Because it's supposedly a really, really limited one, so I'm not sure if I'm ever going to open it. I may eventually, but I'm one of those types. I know I'm a prick like that. So this whole time, as we were talking about, this show has been mirroring what I think really added to mine and Joe's creepiness. We brought this up very early in the podcast, which is, now been months ago, that on Sunday, October 22nd, 1989, a local kid by the name of Jacob Wetterling was biking home from a Tom Thumb convenience store in St. Joe, which is 6 miles from our hometown. And really, you can't even tell. It's, we used to go out there. I used to date a girl and used to hang out at Hardee's all the time out there. I mean, it was very seamless from where our hometown was, the town over. It was just kind of a sprawl. And they had gone to rent a movie. And Jake Wetterling was kidnapped by a man in a stocking cap and a gun. And had them ditch their bikes and took Jacob, and Jacob was never seen again. We've gone over somewhat of the timeline, but I'm just going to get you guys kind of caught up. Was that 2 days later, October 24th, the investigators received a tip that Wetterling's disappearance may have been connected to a series of abductions to another town, which was a little bit farther away, probably about 10, 15 miles away. However, they would not investigate that tip for more than 2 months. The gentleman that was revealed to be was a guy by the name of Danny Heinrich. And Danny Heinrich was first identified as a suspected child abductor in January of 89, a whole 10 months prior to Jacob Wetterling being kidnapped. Another boy was kidnapped and assaulted, and for whatever reason, he was ruled out. Came in December 12th. Heinrich was interviewed by 2 FBI agents for the first time. In January, the Painesville police came forward to say that this gentleman was considered a suspect for molestation episodes over the last couple of years over town. 2 days later, he's interviewed again by sheriff's deputy and FBI. 2 days later, he fails a lie detector test and is put under surveillance. 10 days later, they investigate his home. This is where shit gets fucked up right here. 3 days after that, he was in a lineup, and he was not identified by the victim in Cold Spring. But the lineup was not shown to any of the other victims or the two boys who were with Wetterling. And the fact that it had already been a year since this victim in Cold Spring had seen this guy. He was arrested about a week later and was charged with kidnapping and first degree sexual misconduct for the abduction of Cold Spring, but was released. Then March and April. Now the show released in April. Again, me and Joe had talked about this. We had seen the sketches, and at this point, there was all the speculation about what's going on. Everyone forgot about Heinrich, and by June of 1990, the current county sheriff that this was done at the time said that he was completely forgotten about. They just never went after him. 25 years later, this guy's arrested for child porn charges. And they put two and two together and are like, wait a minute, this guy was involved in the Wetterling kidnapping. What's going on here? They started pressing him on it for months. And in August 31st, Joe and I would finally have our town of August 31st of 2016, he showed the investigators where he killed and buried him, and in a wooded area on a farm, which was the second burial site. He had buried him there in another place, and they found his jacket. So he went back out there and dug him up and moved him to this farm. Now I don't understand, but he was sentenced to a federal prison in Oklahoma. He got 20 years, but not for the murder.
No, that was his bargaining chip. They just got him on the child porn charges. He would not be charged in the murder of Jacob Wetterling.
Mm-hmm.
And,
so
yeah,
they got him on the one count of he pleaded guilty to one count of the 25 federal porn charges. And agreed to give the details. Also, admitted to molesting the boy in Cold Spring, and he was sentenced to the maximum prison term of 20 years. However, the judge, the sentencing judge, said, quote, "We won't pretend that this crime and sentence is about child pornography. It is also about changing the lives of so many children and parents who prayed for Jacob's return and also feared you coming out of the dark. Every child knows the story of Jacob Wetterling. You stole the innocence of children in small towns in the cities of Minnesota and beyond. And that this crime is so heinous, so brutal, and awful that it is unlikely society will ever let you go free." So...
yeah,
that was our Bob.
That was our Bob, and there's some I do like. So his house, I think, what was it, in Cold Spring or Albany or something like that?
It was in Cold Spring.
Cold Spring, like it's just like this shitty rundown house, because he got busted.
Oh, Annandale. I'm sorry, it was Annandale.
Annandale, yeah, Annandale.
Yeah.
So it's the shitty house in Annandale or whatever, and what. Somebody in the community, like after he'd busted and got jailed off, they bought it and then tore it down.
Yeah.
By like a nice like baptism by fire sort of thing, like the monster is gone in a sense.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
He's still out there. He'll probably die in prison. He won't be missed by anybody. But yeah, no. He was our Bob.
He was our Bob.
And you can read the details. The details of what he did to Jacob is such cold-bloodedness. It's fucking, that story is just so fucking tragic.
Yeah, he kidnapped him, sexually assaulted him, molested him, killed him.
Shot him in the back of the head.
Shot him in the back of the head, drove him to a gravel pit, buried him, and then they found the jacket, so he went back out there, dug him up, and buried him on this farm. Yeah. Fucking, this guy was a monster. Yeah. And this guy got away with it. And if you're interested in hearing more about a devoted podcast to that story. There is a podcast called In the Dark, and their first season is all about not the reveal of it, but about the mishandling of how badly Stearns County fucked up over the years on that. And what was really interesting is that actually while they were recording that podcast 9 months into them doing not recording but doing everything into it, then this came out, and so they did a addendum episode. But yeah, the podcast itself is less about him and more about how the investigation of the crime and the effects on its community, and how it focuses on the systematic failures of the Stearns County Sheriff's Office, not only on this case, but a bunch of the case. And yeah. Mm-hmm.
Stearns County fucked something up this bad. Color me shocked.
I am right. Oh, really? Holy shit! Not Stearns County.
The Alabama of the North, as my buddy Dan calls it.
What's that?
My buddy Dan calls St. Cloud and Stearns County the Alabama of Minnesota.
I call it this. I've always called it the Mason-Dixon line of Minnesota.
Yeah.
Once you get there,
if you're in St. Cloud, I feel bad for you.
I feel terrible for you guys, especially since you guys, with Voldemort running around, you guys hit the New York Times list of #1 places that's going to go, and you're still having your fair, you're still having your county fair. Good job, guys.
Yeah, and I'm mocking you, and I'm in North Dakota, people. I mean,
so, yeah, when you break everything down, and they kind of had this guy dead to rights, and it was just slipped through their hands. And again, you look at some of what was going on in Twin Peaks, and you look at the clues. And like I said, when you watch the show, those first 14 episodes, there is a lot of things that point to Leland. A lot of things.
But there's also a lot of red herrings, too.
There's a lot of red herrings as well. But, so it's one of those things where it just, to me, I there is such a life imitating art to this, in a way, especially knowing, what we find out at the end of the episode, at the end of the series, where for 25 years, and you guys, at this point I think we're done with kind of spoilers, because the ultimate spoiler of the show is who killed Laura Palmer.
Bob, Mr. Fumajora.
Well, yes, Mr. Yeah. Mr. Tojamura. To get it right, Jesus Christ, Mr. Tojamura. No, I thought it was M.T. Wentz.
John Justice Wheeler.
John Justice Wheeler. But the fact is that at the end of the series, Bob gets away for 25 years.
Yeah, and oddly enough, it's funny because the show came back May of 2017, which was just again
months.
6 months after Heinrich.
Yeah.
Like it happened again.
People. It happened again. It happened again.
The timing is just so. Yeah, it's so weird. It happened again, and like the trauma came back, and then hey, Twin Peaks came back.
Right, and I was like, "What is happening right now? Why am I living in the 80s? Well, I should say early 90s. Because yeah, that's exactly what it was. So yeah, it was crazy. The two things kind of really coincided. So, I think at this point, this is really where we're going to wrap up the Jacob Wetterling side of the story and kind of our trauma there. And really,
we'll bring it up at the first episode of The Return, just to remind people, it was 25 years, the timing of Twin Peaks coming back and then the solving of the Wetterling case is kind of like, it's one of those like spooky coincidences.
It is. It's just, again, odd how this show really mimicked what happened there. And I will say, I think this, this was the trauma episode, which is why I decided to bring this all up now. Me and Joe knew this was going to be the trauma episode. And going forward, after these next 2 episodes, we're gonna the snark, you guys, is gonna come out real hard, real fast.
Yeah, we're just doing most of it in 2 chunks, I believe.
Yes, we're doing majority of it in 2 chunks.
Yeah, because so we're gonna do the next 2 episodes, Fire Walk with me, and then 2 large chunks of season 2, and then the finale of season 2. Which, if I had a choice, my favorite episode of Twin Peaks, it would probably be that one, the season finale of season 2. I'm just a sucker for the Red Room stuff.
Yeah, I love the Red Room stuff.
So that's probably why it's up there, and that one's also creepy as fuck. It's not as creepy as Lonely Souls, but it is creepy.
It's up. There's some things that are there that I go, whoa, how did they get away with that on TV as well? But yeah, I think it's super creepy. I still think my favorite episode is probably either season or episode 3 or episode 9. I think are my 2 favorites. And I think I have to go more with 9. I like 3 because that's when they first bring up, the that there's something else going on here, right? When they start kind of hinting at what him and his Zen practices, and he's throwing the glass bottle, and there's just something that's going to be different here. But I really think that when we first get introduced to the giant, I think is really, for me, when my love for the show really grew. And then unfortunately, after this episode traumatized me, and then my mom stopped watching.
Yeah, my dad stopped watching.
Yep. I think a lot of people stopped watching after this episode, and that's very apparent. And so it would take me a long time before I'd ever come back and see the season 2, and by God, I didn't miss shit except for that last episode.
And also, an interesting note: this is the only episode. Lonely Souls is the only episode that just had Frost as the writer and Lynch as the director. Every other time it was either Lynch Frost being a co-writing duo, or it is Frost with some other writers. This is the first one where it's just left to Mark does the writing, David does the directing. So that's kind of an interesting thing here too with that.
Super interesting. Okay, so Joe, let's talk a little bit about now what we all have else going on. What is going on with the Joe Down?
We are deep in Fast and Furious month.
You are balls deep, my friend.
We just did the Fast 5, which brings in characters from like pretty much all the movies leading up to it, even from the second movie, which seems like it was completely retconned until they bring a main character from that in. So yeah, we're in the balls out crazy, which I appreciate. We have Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson as Luke Hobbs.
Yep.
And frankly, The Rock is America's. He's a goddamn American hero in my eyes. He's just like, I love The Rock. I don't care.
Man crush? Is it a man crush for you?
Oh, he's so muscly. No, but he just oozes charisma. I pretty much like, he can be in anything, and at least I can enjoy him in it, even if it's a shitty movie.
You know what, man? I will say this. Before we got the Disney Plus, we didn't really watch Disney movies, and now my youngest is super huge into it. I did not know that he was in Moana and was singing in that and was one of the main characters in that, and I had a lot more respect for him. I was like, man, that's not a bad song. And I was like, wait, The Rock sang that? Holy shit. Yeah, dude's good.
Yeah, he's one of the few people who was able, well, not a few, he's like the only one who bloomed outside of pro wrestling. Started off as a big name wrestler and then went to the movies and made it on his own without having to rely on Vince McMahon and all that to keep him afloat. So
Wait a minute, sir. Hold on a minute. You're going to tell me that you don't think Hot Rod has that distinction as well? He made one of my favorite movies of all time, sir.
Well, he did They Live, but he also went back to WWE.
Well, so did The Rock. The Rock goes back.
Well, The Rock goes back just like once every like few years. Like Roddy Piper kept going back and back until they had to eventually just say, yeah, we can't have you back anymore.
Yeah, fair enough. All right. I'll give you that.
But, like Roddy Piper did, do movies and all that. But, like, again, he didn't become a global phenomenon outside of WWE like The Rock did. Like, yeah. you just got to give respect to that. That can't be an easy thing to do as most of these guys are typecast as wrestlers. Like, even Hulk Hogan, famed racist Hulk Hogan couldn't pull that off.
No, he couldn't. Even with Suburban Commando and No Holds Barred, and what else did he do? Like, those are the only two. What about
McMuscles?
Santa McMuscles, and what about the TV show Thunder in Paradise?
Enough about pro wrestling, Paul. What's coming up for Cast That Movie?
Oh fuck. So we will be recording Jingle All the Way, recasting Jingle All the Way, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Christmas vehicle that was hoping to spawn a franchise. And the dream project will be the story of Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes, which was supposed to be made a movie and just didn't get done. So yeah, that's going to be our two recasts. We are now, you can find us on SoundCloud, YouTube, Spotify, and iTunes. You can find this podcast and all podcasts, the Cast That Movie podcast as well on there. So everything now, you guys, there's no reason. You guys can find it, share it. We made it very easy for you guys to find and listen to the Cast That Movie podcast and the podcast above a convenience store talking Twin Peaks. So anything else going on, Joe?
Not really. It's Fast and Furious month and talking Twin Peaks. I'm excited. Not really much for the next two episodes of this. I love talking Twin Peaks, but I'm really interested in us getting into Fire Walk with Me.
That's going to be great. I'm so excited for us to get into that movie. Yeah.
I don't think either of us, Paul and I have talked Twin Peaks a lot, but I don't think we've delved into like Fire Walk with Me a whole lot. We've talked The Return, we've talked the original series. Fire Walk with Me is just one of those things. It's just, I don't know. It's like the elephant in the room.
It is because Fire Walk with Me was not only was it divisive as a David Lynch work of art, but it was divisive among the fans.
Oh yeah, and we'll discuss it. I had certainly a rocky relationship with that movie. I'll talk about and how I developed a newfound respect for Fire Walk with Me through, oddly enough, not David Lynch, but one person who didn't even participate in the making of it, Mark Frost.
Interesting. I can't wait to hear that story. Oh, all right. Well, I think we'll call it here. But again, check us out, you guys. There's 4 different ways now you're gonna be able to check out the podcast. So look us up on YouTube, SoundCloud. Maybe if you're listening to it, you're listening on one of those 4 ways, Spotify or iTunes. But share, get it out there. And again, we record every Monday, and we will be happy to take any questions, comments, concerns you guys have and bring them up on air.
Till next time, I'm Joe Fremming.
And I'm Paul Muad'Dib.
And the owls are not what they seem.